Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
Today is the final episode of version 3.0, the final episode of 3.0 Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, because on Wednesday, episode 300 is the launch of version 4.0, so get ready for that. And yes, Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything, meaning that any question that you send to ama@fppradio.com will wind up getting answered. I already have several good questions, and send more over. And this week I will actually be doing another Friday show. I know when I started back in, what was it, 2014, I believe, going to the thrice weekly, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then, earlier this year, I believe it was back in February, is when, I've been having conflicts on Friday. Not conflicts as in, like sparring or dueling, but conflicts as in scheduling conflicts that have prevented me for the better part of a month and a half maybe from being able to do Friday shows. But I was able to get a Friday show done last week before I got on the road, went to Philadelphia. I will get a Friday show in this week because there is no travel for me this week. The following week, April 1st, I do not believe I will be able to do a show. I may or may not be going to Washington, D.C. on April 1st for a taping of a presidential debate. No. Unfortunately, it's not the one that you're thinking of. It's not the Stossel debate. That one's being taped on March 29th. And I have something special planned for March 29th, which is 1 week from tomorrow. No, I will not be appearing on the Stossel show. I will be appearing on something that is a lot better, the Beer and BS show. And I would say the full proper name of the show, but this is a radio-friendly program that is available on iHeartRadio. And one of the criteria for being on iHeartRadio is that you have to be radio-friendly. And one of the things that makes you radio-friendly is you cannot swear. But I could say beer and bull ship, as in a large boat that carries bulls, although you would just replace the P with a T to get the actual name of the program that I will be on. And the reason that I say that it's a much better show is because, well, they're having me on it, and I get to drink a good craft beer while I'm on the show. Now, let me just briefly talk about what happened this past weekend in Philadelphia. So, as you are aware, on Friday, I drove down to Philadelphia, and the drive wound up taking longer than expected because of traffic that apparently rush hour in Connecticut lasts from about 3 p.m. to 7, and I was in traffic pretty much the whole way through Connecticut. Once I got to right around Springfield, Mass., which is right by the Connecticut state line, all the way through Hartford. And then it wound up speeding up after I got through Hartford, was able to pick up the speed a little bit. And then once I got close to like Danbury down near the New York City area, hit traffic again, and then hit traffic just north of New York City on, I believe it was Interstate 287 as I was going north of New York City because I didn't want to drive through New York City because I knew that traffic there would be absolutely horrible. But nonetheless, wound up taking 7.5 hours, whereas Google initially told me it would take 6 to wind up getting there. And so I got there, again, a little later than I expected, but went to the hospitality suite hosted by the Montgomery County Libertarian Party. that being Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. And there were several people there that I had known previously from when I lived in Pennsylvania. And it was great to see people, and some of the people that were there I knew through other general liberty activism sort of stuff. And it was great seeing everybody, and then checked out the room that the presidential debate was happening in the following day. And so, looked at that, and it was a very nice room, and, should be able to get everybody in here. Got about 100 chairs. And, on Saturday evening, when it was time for the presidential debate, they actually wound up having to keep bringing chairs in. I believe they wound up having about 120 people in the room seated, plus there was standing room in the back, plus there were people in the hallway that kept poking their heads into the room. And of all of the debates that I've participated in thus far, the one this past Saturday was, I would dare say, my favorite, and I would also dare say almost perfectly tailored for someone like myself. And the reason I say that is because of who the panelists were that were asking the questions. There was Larkin Rose, there was Josie Wells, and there was a gentleman, Hashim, whose last name I do not recall, but Hashim is with Muslims for Liberty. And they asked some very good questions, and there's some video floating around where you can see snippets of the debate and a couple people giving answers to a couple of the questions, but the full edited version of the video is not yet up, and I don't think a full unedited version is up either. So whenever that winds up being posted, I will let you know when I find out. And I know I've said that on other debates, and I've not let you know, and that's because I've not seen the actual edited versions of several of the debates. The only edited debate that I've actually seen where it was the North Carolina debate was not the version that the North Carolina LP wound up doing an edit on. It was John McAfee, who had somebody from his team do the edits, and I got that one posted. There was an edited version of the Biloxi debate that I'm fairly certain I posted, but it's not the edited version. That's the official version from the LP Mississippi. As far as I know, they are still, doing some sort of haggling with the editors on that, where the people that were doing the edits wound up not releasing the video the way they were supposed to. But that said, again, whenever I find out, I will post links in show notes, and I will let you know. Although, again, on Wednesday, there is going to be a slight shift in the direction of the show, and I'll explain a little more on Wednesday exactly what I mean by a shift in the direction of the show. It's still keeping the same name, and it's still going to promote ideas of liberty in some kind of way. It's just not going to be focused as much on news of the day. It's going to be, I promised myself that I would wait until Wednesday to tell you exactly what the new direction is. So you'll have to wait. And, send it to me in a question, ama@fppradio.com. That way I don't forget to tell you the new direction. Stay tuned.
During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com, all major bookstores, and now available as an audiobook.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. The liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hypercronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hypercronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com, helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
So before I jump into some news, because I do want to cover some news on this episode before I change directions with the show, but before I jump into the news, I want to make sure that I tell you about a way that you can keep your money in the free economy. That is, assuming that you use free market money. You do use Bitcoin, right? And you promote it as an alternative in this fiat-centric world. Well, you need Spendabit in your arsenal. Spendabit is the search engine for things that, you guessed it, you can buy with Bitcoin. Go to spendabit.fppradio.com and search. They've got a search engine. Thousands of merchants have their products on Spendabit, spendabit.fppradio.com. If you're a Bitcoin accepting merchant like I am, ask about their merchant suite to help reach even more customers. Go to spendabit.fppradio.com. That's spendabit.fppradio.com. So let me do a follow-up on a couple of the stories that I had talked about a while back. There was a question during one of the AMAs several weeks ago about the bike riders in San Diego that had crossed over into land that was part of a military base, and they wound up getting their bikes stolen. Well, somebody living out in San Diego sent me an email earlier today that says almost 60 days and the bikers are going to get their bikes back only after signing that they would not sue the government for any wrongdoing. If we do not have crazy one-sided government, by the way, they will come to an agreement to be able to ride on some of the property. No fines had to be paid. Justice, no. The bikers went 60 days with no weekend biking unless they had another bike. And so, yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous and ludicrous that some government agent can just come steal your bike and say, well, you were on property that you didn't have permission of, even though we didn't mark that this is government property that you need permission to come onto. Give us your property. Initially, the feds said they would have to wind up paying some large fine. Turns out, at least according to what I'm seeing here, that there was no fine that had to be paid. They just had to say, we won't sue you for taking our stuff. Now, there was something that I had talked about a while back. There was a question about the federal government running a child porn website and entrapping people. And, well, I actually know somebody that wound up, basically getting raided by the feds yesterday. It happened while I was in Philadelphia. I woke up, went to get online, and saw that I was tagged in a post on Facebook. Darryl, where are you? And I was like, I'm in Philly. I'll be leaving soon. And was a post about, government agents, cops being at the LRN studio. And, well, apparently the feds put in a warrant that someone accessing the internet from the LRN Wi-Fi had visited the child porn website that the feds were running. And so the feds, when they showed up, they took almost every electronic device that they could find and wound up, basically shutting LRN.FM off the air for a few hours. There is something akin to LRN.FM that is currently on the air. There's a fundraiser going on right now. This was not started by Ian Freeman. This was started by a fan of Free Talk Live and a fan of the Liberty Radio Network, gentleman by the name of Virgil Viduva. Virgil is the creator of a cell phone application called Cell 411. That's CELL, the numbers 411. And if you have not downloaded this, I highly recommend it. And no, Virgil is not paying me to say this. It's basically, you may or may not recall, I believe I talked about the Peacekeeper app a while back. And, well, the Peacekeeper app never really got off the ground. They did some fundraising and came out with something, and then they did more fundraising and kind of upgraded a little bit. Well, what Virgil has done is basically he took everything that Peacekeeper was trying to do and made it into an app and then did so much more. So Cell 411, and again, that's CELL 411. It's in the Google Play Store. I believe it's in the Apple Store as well. Download the app. It's absolutely free. So Virgil put up this fundraiser and tried the goal that he put up was $5,000. And in the last 17 hours, there has been nearly $4,800 raised thus far. I will post the link to the GoFundMe in the show notes so that, and I'm saying make LRN.FM again, sort of a play on the whole, Donald Trump's Make America Great, or the parody of that, Make Donald Drump again, where they're spelling the name the way like his great-grandfather's last name was spelled before he came and got the Starbucks version at Ellis Island. So let's make LRN.FM again and donate to help offset the cost of getting new equipment to get LRN back on the air the way it should be, to where you will be able to hear shows like Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on LRN.FM, to where you will hear the daily newscasts that I produce on LRN.FM. So, again, I will post the link in the show notes so that you can go and donate if you have a few extra dollars. And let's see what else. Yes, the anniversary of the Iraq War. This is something that most people honestly don't think about any longer because they think, well, Obama ended the wars, right? When Obama took office in 2009, he said he was going to end the wars, and well, we've not been having a war in Iraq. No. There's not a war. Those aren't boots on the ground. Those are people that are there on a training mission. No. There's still a war going on in Iraq, and the U.S. military is still involved in that war in Iraq. And, well, I've got a story here from antiwar.com, and it was published on March 20th, which was yesterday. And apparently the anniversary of the start of the war was March 19th. So the story from Jason Dietz. On March 19th, 2003, U.S. troops invaded Iraq, setting the stage for almost 9 years of military occupation. But even though the U.S. nominally withdrew from Iraq in 2011, it was not long before the Obama administration was sending troops back in for a whole additional war. The new war against the Islamic State in Iraq centers largely on fighting the same insurgency as the last war, which raises questions about whether it's fair to call it a distinct war or simply a continuation of resistance against the U.S.-installed government and U.S. troops themselves. And I would dare say that you could really call the 2003 invasion a continuation of the Gulf War that started in 1991 when George H.W. Bush was president, because the troops never really left. They stayed in various capacities, and they were enforcing no-fly zones over parts of the country. And then, well, 2003 happens and ramp it up and put in a bunch of new troops. And then 2004 was the surge. You remember the surge? Well, I really say that the war's been going on for 25 years, but for the sake of argument, let's call it 13, and I'll tell you more. Stay tuned.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerary supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
Fiend Phone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of Fiend Phone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve Fiend Phone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, Echo, November, phone.com.
Fiend Phone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
The article from antiwar.com talking about the 13-year anniversary of U.S. troops in Iraq. Since indeed the weekend anniversary arrived with news of a U.S. Marine killed in rocket fire from the Islamic State forces against a military base, and additional U.S. troops were reported wounded in the incident, reminding everyone that 13 years in, U.S. troops are not just on the ground in Iraq, but in harm's way. And while the previous few anniversaries have fueled reflection on the losses of the initial occupation, in 2016, the attention is turning toward the ever-increasing escalation in the new conflict, with the Pentagon admitting that they have far more troops in Iraq than public estimates, and more than the current U.S. agreement with Iraq legally allows. Surprise, surprise, the U.S. government is breaking a treaty. That's what I'm saying, not what Jason Dietz from antiwar.com is saying. And the reason I don't sound at all surprised is because breaking treaties is just one more service that the U.S. federal government provides. Don't believe me? Find a Native American. They can tell you all about it. The article here from Anti-War concludes, having already burst through the cap negotiated with Iraq, the Pentagon continues to push for additional troops all the time, and with officials openly talking about a long, long war against the Islamic State, the likelihood is that U.S. boots will be on Iraqi soil for decades more. And, of course, U.S. military will remain in Afghanistan for a long time as well. I believe the latest that I heard, and this was a while back when they were discussing a timeline for removing troops from Afghanistan, was 2024 and beyond, meaning that for at least another almost decade, troops will be there, and probably a lot longer after that. U.S. military remains in the Philippines and Cuba, and most people don't realize that the U.S. military began their almost occupation of Cuba. It's not a real occupation because they've not taken over the entire island, but there has been a U.S. military base in Cuba since the Spanish-American War. And Cuba at one point was, you guessed it, an American territory, a possession for a brief period of time. And then for some reason, the U.S. government decided, all right, well, we'll let Cuba be its own thing, but we're keeping Puerto Rico and a bunch of other places because America. And, well, I wasn't planning on talking about Cuba, but since I am, Barack Obama and the First Lady and Sasha, Malia, and several other members of what's called the First Family are in Cuba. It's the first time since 1928 that a sitting American president has visited Cuba. The last time that happened was I believe it was Calvin Coolidge in 1928. Obama is hoping to sort of restore a lot of the diplomatic ties with Cuba, and already started doing some of that back in 2014 when it was announced in December of 2014. But the Republicans in Congress, they're not happy with it, and they're doing everything they can to stifle the re-establishment, if you will, of diplomatic relations. They're not lifting the embargo, although there are ways that Obama is finding to get around the Republicans in Congress that aren't really working with him to restore relations with the people of Cuba. And this is something that most people don't realize, is that the embargo against the Cuban government is not harming the Cuban government, it's harming the Cuban people. It's harming the people that the American government is claiming we need to protect. Well, it's harming them by preventing the Cuban people from getting goods and supplies and, well, in a lot of cases, food that they would otherwise not be able to get. So let's get rid of the embargo completely and, hopefully restore relations, because really there should not be any government getting in between people at all. So if I wanted to send stuff to somebody in Cuba, there should not be a government saying, no, you can't do that. Whether that be the U.S. government or the Cuban government or any other government in the world, no one should prevent me from being able to trade goods and or services with anybody anywhere in the globe, as long as such services are not causing unjust harm to another person. Now, let me jump over to another story, also from antiwar.com, also dealing with a war, also in the Middle East. Although this time it's not talking about escalating a war, but actually reports that there's a ceasefire in the Yemeni War. The story, again, from antiwar.com, says that there are reports from pro-Saudi Yemeni officials suggesting that both they and the Shiite Houthis that they've been fighting since last year, when Saudi Arabia began attacking Yemen, have agreed to a ceasefire for, quote-unquote, a week or two in anticipation of peace talks to be held in April. Details are still scant, but the UN has reportedly been informed of the planned talks, and they are to be hosted in Kuwait. It is unclear if the Saudi coalition is included in the truce or simply the Yemeni allies. Previous proposals for talks had stalled on demands that the pro-Saudi faction that the Houthis agreed to unilaterally disarm and surrender all of their territory. Though it seems unlikely to be the case, the pro-Saudi officials claim that the Houthis have agreed to do so this time around, and that they agreed to the ceasefire to show good intentions. Now, let me just sort of recap here what's been going on. Last March, the Saudi military began bombing Yemen about 2 months after the Yemeni president Hadi had resigned his post. And the Houthis basically said, we're the government of Yemen, or we want to be recognized as the government of Yemen. Saudi Arabia said, no, the guy that resigned 2 months ago is still the president, even though his term actually ended a year ago, but he's the president, and we'll show you by bombing you. And so there's been territorial gains to where the Houthis control some territory. The Saudi coalition of what was the Yemeni military, they control some places, and the Saudis are saying that the Houthis need to give up all of their territorial claims and respect the Saudis' authority. The Houthis are saying no, and, well, that's where we are today. The article continues. Previous proposals for talks had stalled on demands that the pro-Saudi faction, or rather from the pro-Saudi faction, and this is what I just read, where they demanded the Houthis unilaterally disarm and surrender their territory. The Saudis began attacking Yemen late in March of 2015, vowing to reinstall President Hadi into power. Hadi was installed for a 2-year term in office in 2012 and resigned in January 2015, long after the term was supposed to have been over. Despite this, Saudi officials insist he is the rightful ruler of Yemen. And, well, just because there's a ceasefire doesn't mean that the Saudi blockade of Yemen is going to end. Hopefully that ends with the peace talks, and I'll try to keep you posted. Don't forget, every Wednesday I answer your questions, AMA at FPPradio.com.